Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of The InEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast about the future of automotive, about EVs, SDVs, that's software-defined vehicles. Where are we going? How are we going to get there with cars? Will they have steering wheels? What will they look like? We have somebody who might be able to shine a light on that. This is really a legend. Somebody I've been very actually nervous to talk to because this guy has had such an impact on all of automotive and knows just about everybody. Designed the cars, the supercars of our youth, of collectively the youth of the world.
Look, dude, the new Beetle to the Audi TT to the Chrysler 300.
Well, involved, and we said supercars.
Ford Mustang, yeah,
involved with the 959.
Porsche, but look, I've been waiting for this my entire career.
And this guy, that voice you heard, that's Johnny Lieberman, co-host of The InEVitable, automotive influencer, writer, baker, beer judge. Extraordinaire.
And that's Ed Lowe, and we should get to Freeman.
We should get to Freeman. So Freeman Thomas.
It's going to be a long one.
I'll just a very quick. He's been everywhere. Started at Porsche, went to Audi, went to VW, went to
DaimlerChrysler.
Yeah. Ford, and now is the CEO and CCO of Meyers Manx.
Yeah, we also did other stuff in between.
A lot of other stuff in between, and we're this is literally part one of probably four, if I'm honest.
I wish.
We will, because we're definitely gonna have Freeman.
He's got a car company to run.
We have to get Freeman back in here to chat about all the things he has done and that he is doing. So I hope it's a good one. Hope you love it. Here's Freeman Thomas. Boy, this is one I've been waiting for a long time.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen.
This is a legend.
Yeah, design legend.
The myth, the legend. Also has a really cool name. Let's just talk about that.
Very cool name. Also has a very cool 356, which I've seen at the Art Center show once or twice.
Mr. Freeman Thomas.
Which one, the Speedster or the
Coupe?
Okay, I don't have the Coupe anymore.
Oh.
Yeah, but I still have the Speedster.
Okay, what's your current Porsche lineup?
Well, I've got a 56 Beehive Speedster with a glass bar. I've had that for a long time. I've got a 72 911S Coupe, no sunroof Coupe, Viper Green.
Oh, I've seen that, yes.
I've got a 914-6. Let's see.
A fellow 914 owner, but a 914-4. So.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. And that's it right now on the Porsche front. And then I have... I still have my Volkswagen Vanagon from my Volkswagen Audi days.
That's what Type 3?
It's a 1990-91, so it's the run-out model. Okay. It's Karat. And
rear facing. So it's got the two rear facing seats. Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's just totally, great machine.
Yep.
And, those are cool.
And I've got a Super 7. And,
yes,
and every sports car enthusiast should always experience Super 7.
I've driven way more than my fair share, and I've never actually driven a Lotus, but Caterham.
Well, mine's a Caterham, but it's an early one, so It's got the early clamshell, fenders, and original body size.
California registered?
Yeah.
Where'd you get it?
I bought it off of the guy that he built it from a knockdown kit.
Yeah.
And
so it's really early.
Yeah. So it's a 94.
Okay.
And he had it in the Valley, and it wasn't for sale. So I was looking, and I specifically for one that isn't modernized. This one has it's a Super Sprint, which is really nice. So it has the 1700. With side drafts and stuff like that.
Is it a Ford motor?
It's a Ford Kent-based motor.
Okay.
And
how many of those did they are legal? Are California registration to me is mind blowing. How many do they sell in
they sell them right now.
It's a kit. So if you build it as a kit,
you can do special construction.
So it's funny you said people should be around. Like the first time I ever drove one, I was actually with a mutual friend, Preston Lerner.
Okay.
And he had a Lotus Elise. We're at Tail of the Dragon, and it was July 7th, 2007. So it was 70 years of 7 or 60 years of 7, whatever. July 7. Yeah, 2000. And so I'm driving his Elise, and I'm like, what? I'm one with the car, the horse and rider, all that. And then I get into it was a Caterham.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, the Elise is a fat pig.
It's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
I never driven one.
Oh, you got it. It's even better than a motorcycle because you're just on the ground.
Yeah.
A motorcycle, there's not a lot there, but you're pretty high up. And so this is as low as you can get in a vehicle.
It's like if you experience, like, say, an aerial atom, which
Yes.
is too exposed.
It's too
Which I
exposed.
have.
And then you drive, let's say, the Speedster on the other end, which is really nice. You can cruise around. Your wife is happy.
Right.
And then the Super 7, put the doors on. That's the trick. Put the doors on.
Doors on it, yep.
And then air doesn't buffet inside the cabin.
And one earplug.
Yeah. No, it's perfect with the doors on.
Oh, no, I just meant to keep the gravel out of your ear.
Yeah. So, but mine's got the Sierra 5-speed box and a DDON,
Nice.
And
Oh, yeah.
that thing just connects.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
just...
they're incredible.
Yeah.
What's it weigh? Is it like 1,500 pounds?
1,200 pounds.
1,200 pounds.
I thought it was going
Yeah.
under.
So that's like a Lotus Elise, like a real early Elise would be like 2,200 pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is, the same power, 1,000 pounds less.
It's crazy. And it's just so linear, and it's like a four-wheeled Norton, the way it feels.
Yeah. So you got to do an EV version of one of these.
Yeah. Yeah, some things are probably better to leave as they are.
Interesting.
Because you can.
I'm just thinking Manx and, if you had a 7 kit,
Yeah,
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Manx is different though.
I know.
It's a different animal.
Totally. No, totally.
So,
So how do we want to do that? Do we want to talk about the Manx first?
All right,
We want to go.
So
we
Freeman's
could
the
go
CEO of
in.
Meyers Manx, but let's back up.
Well, we could look. We have a long history. It's mostly driven by me, but I'm trying to evolve where we go through in detail the background of this person.
Let me do it. It's my handwriting. I'll do it quick.
I have notes too.
No, but your notes are
This is one of the most famous automotive designers out there.
But grew up
Legend.
with my friend, my coach, Jeff Zwart. You're a Southern California native, and you and Jeff went to Art Center together.
well, he went ahead, and I met Jeff in 1968. So we're neighbors in this little condominium neighborhood with alleyways, in Cypress, California. The time of the Stingray.
Right.
And and his dad had
You mean the Stingray bicycle?
Stingray bicycle. This neighborhood's super cool because Southern California, quick adopters. When the Mustang came out, everybody gets the Mustang. Corvairs are everywhere, but European cars, from our neighbor across the street, had old Hillmans and Jaguars, and
Right.
and we had we had Mini Coopers.
Yeah, right.
Jeff's dad had a 901, and mom had a 356.
Right. That's wild.
Yeah. And it was just, these were used cars. The new cars were usually the Mustangs and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, you got your fill of all of that.
So how did you get to Art Center?
Well, my way to Art Center was a little bit of a long road because Jeff and I, he moved on, I moved to Huntington Beach, and we sort of lost contact with each other. Oh. And so I went in the Air Force right out of high school. And so I was stationed in England, RAF Upper Heyford near Oxford. Uh-huh. And so I knew nothing about car design, knew nothing about, I just sketched cars all the time.
And what were you doing in the Air Force?
I was crash rescue on F-111 base.
So not even related.
Not
in
even
any way.
related.
Whoa! F-111s?
F-111.
So you were enlisted. You just joined the Air Force. You didn't
right.
go to ROTC or anything. It was-
No, right out of the Air Force. I mean, right out of high school. I did right when I was actually 17 and a half when I signed the papers.
This is what year would you have joined?
1975.
So right after Vietnam.
Yeah, right after Vietnam. And so we still had a lot of people, part of that. But going over to Europe was insane.
Sure.
My dream was to have a Honda CB400F motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saved up and I bought one cash right when I landed. I went into Oxford to the Honda dealer, and they still had a 75 brand new on, in the showroom, red on red. And, and that I rode that bike every day.
Right.
Huh.
Oh, that's awesome.
My father-in-law was a F-111 pilot.
Oh,
So
what a
he was-
dream.
Yeah, he was. Doesn't remember it quite so fondly being the third option in strategic air command as being he's like, they didn't tell us, but they would launch the ICBMs first.
Yes.
And then they would be the subs. And then they would, because they would scramble the jets, and then you guys were basically sent in and probably not to return because you're.
Well, we were at a key strategic base,
sure,
and I had secret clearance, so I had to have escorts when we went into, like, say, the strategic rooms and stuff like that. But just watching, we do what's called ramp patrol, and it would go on into the night till flying would go down. I would follow an F-111 right to the the starting grid. It'd be like 2 a.m, middle of the English countryside. It's all black. Just all you see is the flashing lights of the runway. And it would go through its afterburners, on and off, and then just shoot off into the sky. It was so insane.
What were you following him in a Jeep?
It was like a Jeep, and a Jeep pickup.
Interesting.
Yeah, wow. And it was like when it was a Grand Cherokee, it had a pickup version of that.
Okay.
Right. Oh, yeah. The Comanche or something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. And
Comanche.
And I remember this one pilot had a 73 Carrera RS silver. And he would drive. Yeah, it would drive it right up to his plane, and you got to imagine, I'm 18 years old.
Sure.
And this thing is just like, I'm dreaming. And in that area, my Porsche infection just kept growing because I would go visit Auto Farm and places like that, and that was a perfect time.
But even especially in England, like an RS has to be like hen's teeth rare, right?
Yeah, Well, the thing was, back then in England, when a Porsche was a few years old, it was already rusting.
Oh, right.
And it's not like today where you see.
Right.
And so it was a rare sight, even in 75, 76, to see an early 911 on the road.
Right.
And so that was a sighting.
So this whole time you said you're sketching cars as well, but you had no formal art training up until this point?
No. And so I got out of the Air Force, and I majored in German. And so,
because your mother was German and you spoke German,
right? I spoke conversational German.
Gotcha.
And I was interested in German, and so I went to Cal State Long Beach. I was majoring in German, and a couple of things happened. I got a magazine, and it talked about Art Center, and talked about this guy that actually got a degree for drawing cars.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, this guy is speaking my language.
Right.
And so I didn't even know about Art Center.
No one does. Yeah.
Right. So this is pre-internet, pre-everything.
Sure.
And so I went up to visit Art Center, and I thought, this is it. This is what I'm destined to do.
Oh, wow.
So, and I didn't have a portfolio, and so I started taking night classes, and I got in, and then shortly afterwards I got a scholarship.
So I'm gonna just pause right there because this part kind of blows my mind. So when you say you were sketching cars in high school and you had this deep interest in Porsches, and then you had this impression from your time overseas supporting F-111s, how good were those drawings before you took night school, before you went to art school? Would you have a talent early on, or were you just kind of
I think that I had a conceptual talent. I always looked at something from really early on. My dad was in the Air Force, and when he would go, and I grew up in Europe in the early days.
Right.
So Scandinavia, Norway, Greece, Spain, and then of course I lived in Germany and places like that. And when my dad would come back to California before we were stationed with him, he would bring me these Schuko toys.
And
probably within about 10 minutes, because they were put together with screws, and within 10 minutes I'd have them apart.
Right.
And so I think that my sketching, I don't think my sketching is great, but my conceptualizing and the other thing, I think, I always look at things like, what's your superpower? And I think my superpower is getting people to work together. And I can sketch, I can draw, I conceptualize, I do the blueprint, I do all of that. But then I figure, okay, this guy's good for that guy's good for that, this person's good for that, and put these teams together. and literally, and just dogmatically go through it.
We're going to come back to that.
That's humble, but you like to get hired. My understanding is Porsche came after you before you graduated.
Yes.
So you must have actually had some like talent.
Yeah, well,
right? I mean, you must have been making.
So I'm in fifth semester, and Larry Shinoda.
Yes.
Stingray. Speaking of legends,
comes out to Art Center, and he wants to interview our class, for possible internships.
Right.
And you can only choose 2. And so he chooses my friend Albert Yu and myself. And so we, that summer go back to Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's International Harvester, right? Trucks, right? And but there's Larry Shinoda. And so I really got to know Larry Shinoda. He actually, it was great because I saw where a lot of designers went after Detroit, and they were really seasoned. So I learned a lot about real design early on. And so after that, Larry said, hey, why don't you stay a couple more weeks? I'd like for you to work for me. And so I worked for him. And then, but one day he goes, kid, where do you want to work when you graduate? And I said, well, I really want to work for Porsche. So he goes, I know Tony Lapine. Him and I worked together in the Skunk Works at General Motors. And I'm going to give him a call. And so he comes back after lunch, and he goes, I just talked with Tony. He's super interested. Oh. And he said, he wants you to send him a portfolio. So I sent him immediately. I sent a portfolio of slides and stuff like that. And then they made me an offer right away.
So just for our listeners, Tony Lapine is the head was a designer for the 928.
Yeah. Well, he ran Porsche design studio from 1969 till literally 1990. And so everything from 917 hippie cars to Carrera RS, 928, all of the generations, all the way up to 959.
968.
All of it.
What we're describing is the power of Art Center. And the connections from the alums.
Well, no, it's funny. It's funny you say that because we had Senyup Lee on a while ago, a couple episodes ago.
Yeah,
and same thing. He found out about Art Center somehow. Like he was a sculptor.
Had no formal. He had a formal classical art training, but had no idea. And didn't. And the craziest thing about Senyup is he grew up in Korea, in poor Korea, where there was not this huge automotive influence at all.
No one had cars.
Didn't have that kind of early impression. Came here, found out about Art Center, spoke no English when he landed. A year later.
So we took English classes. Like you went and took, the night classes you took. He was taking English classes and working in a restaurant or something.
Fast forward is hired to GM.
No. Interns at Ferrari with the Enzo, works on the Enzo, and then graduates, goes and designs the C6 Corvette.
Yeah. Art Center is amazing. But I have to say that my career is, people have said, you got to hire this guy. You got to hire this guy. And so this is where, I ended up with Jay Mays, where I ended up with Tom Gale, where I ended up with going back to Jay Mays at Ford, and back and forth. And then, of course, working with Alois Roof. And I think that a lot of it is that no matter what the design job, I've designed forklifts, Linda forklifts. I've designed Porsches. I've designed Audis, Volkswagens, Fords. Chrysler 300. Came
Chrysler
out.
Pacifica. I want to talk about that.
Yeah, no, I didn't do that.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I know it's on my wiki page, but I didn't do that.
But you were there.
No, that was that was designed by a guy named Eric Stoddard.
But you were at the Pacifica Design Center.
Yeah, so I was both. I was in Auburn Hills and then at Pacifica. Okay. What I did do though. It was because my role at Chrysler was VP of all vehicle architecture and advanced design. And so I was responsible for basically, because I love vehicle architecture. And if you don't have the right proportions on something, it doesn't matter what you do, it'll never be right. And so that's how the 300 came out, getting this Mercedes box of kit that I knew was out there. putting a Hemi in it, putting this body on top of it with this grill, chopped roof, all of the stuff.
And that went back to I wrote it down, the Super 8 Hemi concept.
Well, we did two. We did Super 8 and we did an internal research property, which was the Chrysler.
Okay.
And that's what became the Chrysler 300.
Because the Super 8 was like a Magnum.
Yeah, that was more of the Magnum.
Yeah.
And then eventually they came off of the same platform. But I also, in my team, brought back all the stow-and-go seating. And, we basically took the minivan, looked at it from the standpoint of what's the floor system, what's the door system, what's the window system, what's the roof system, so that people actually can roll windows down.
Right.
And early studies were super amazing proportions. Tomahawk motorcycle.
Yeah,
that's the V10.
Viper. Wolfgang Bernhard wrote it out on the
and
stage.
that was sketched out, as something where I kept thinking I wanted something to make Wolfgang look like a hero,
right?
Yeah, like a superhero,
right?
And transcend, normal, motoring press, something that showed that he was someone that.
And that's one of the most iconic press conferences of all time.
Yeah.
It's like, here's a guy riding out on a V10 motorcycle. What's your executive doing? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I like doing. For me, it's about storytelling, reverse engineering what you're doing. And but I tell you, the hardest part is going from having a great idea and selling that idea.
Sure. Well, I want to get to the TT because I have many questions about that. But let's go. So Porsche 83, 87. And you said
actually till 90.
Oh, till
what happened is I left Porsche at the end of 1987, and Tony Lapine said, anytime you want to come back, you can come back. And I came back to California with my new wife, who I still have, Renee, and I started my own design firm. And within about 6 months, 7 months, I got a call from my old boss and said they want you to come back. And so they came out and basically talked to me. And then so I said, well, I'm not moving back. I'll keep my residence in California, but I would go over to Germany for months at a time for the next 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Weissach. You would visit Weissach?
I was at Weissach.
Where would you stay? Do they have corporate housing out there?
No. I shared an apartment with another designer.
Okay.
After you were married?
Yeah, after I was married over there. So I would come home.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd come home for a couple weeks. I'd go back over for 3 weeks.
Right.
And that went on until, I was home and I got a call from Jay Mays. Right. And I'll be honest with you, I thought Jay was a jerk.
Yeah.
But he was really nice on the phone. I'd never met him. You know how you make these pictures up in your head?
Sure.
And so
100%. I mean, honestly, I don't know you very well, but there was, I think the first time I was introduced to you, I think you were just talking to someone else, and I was like, well, that guy doesn't have time for me. So yeah. You make these things up for you.
Well, before we get to the J Major,
go ahead.
I'm very curious because
you better be about the 959.
It's about that entire timeline. Because here's the thing, right? Like, we live in the era where Porsches are, I would say, without a doubt, like badass, leading the industry, great design, great performance. They've been that way now for probably I'd say about 10 years. There was a period though where Porsche was at a low.
Yes,
and
canceling the 911. That was
this is like they had to be saved by building this SUV and people that they lost their way and all this stuff. And Luftgekühlt, that whole movement has really only increased the mythology of Porsche. But what was the era like when you joined?
So when I joined in 1983, I got there right as the Group B study was shown at Frankfurt. And
so that was 83.
Yeah.
That was the Group B was the
rally.
No, it was a car called the Group B became the 959. But
it was Group B study. Right. It was Group B study. And so then I got to Porsche and I was put into the interior studio. And my first role with that was to start to design the interior of the 959. And so I came up with the concept of the center console with the with the shifter and the display and all of that, and also with the trim patterns and all of that.
Wow.
And then as we're getting more and more along, And you got to imagine a young designer coming in just to work on anything was insane. And so then we're getting closer to showing the car, the production car. So Dick Zoderberg's studio is doing the exterior design, body, and finalizing all the production and all of that. And then we get the role for setting up the show stand. And so I got a couple of roles. I designed the cutaway model in the display stand, and then I also designed the brochure, storyboarded all of that with a couple other people. But I did the concept of the purple halo lighting, did the where it was on the rocks and all of that stuff. Sketched all that out.
Oh, wow.
So that went through, and
That's crazy. I mean, I remember reading about that as I was 10 years old at the time. But
yeah,
I remember reading about it. Seeing the picture of it was Geneva, right?
Well, it was back at Frankfurt again. It went for the 959 production version.
Oh, but the show stand.
The show stand was at Frankfurt.
Frankfurt.
It was at Frankfurt.
Yeah. But I remember there was a picture in some magazine.
Yeah. So, and I designed the cutaway model so that I came up with a concept that was part of the wing. So I have a little bit of a story with that. So they tell me, well, I at first had to draw it out, and they had to approve the way I did it. So I did this cut that was semicircular through the car, which was the first time that had been done. And so they said, all right, now you have to go down to Bauer, down in Stuttgart. Bauer's the company that built the original 911Rs.
Right.
And it was a coach building shop. And they said, we're going to deliver a 959 body. And you have to tape it off and everything else, and they're going to cut it. And so I went down there, I carefully taped off the draw, where it was going to go and everything. They go, come back after lunch. Came back after lunch, the car's cut in half, through that center.
Without you.
None of the parts on it, just all of that. And they go, what do you want to do with the other half of the body? I go, I want it. So it got delivered back to the studio yard. It was mine,
right,
but I had no place to put it.
Sure.
And then I went and worked in the workshop with every single, from the mechanics through to the saddle awry, which was the leather shop and all of that. Every single part I cut on that car, so I knew that car intimately.
Wow.
And then the show stand, I designed it so it looked like part of the wing. And I came up even with a film, storyboarded a film, which didn't get produced, but that was part of the beginning of where I kind of started, this whole idea.
What a crazy car to start on.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: Have you seen the Canapa version, the SC?
Yeah.
I got to ride in one once. And but it was just I love he put the 18-inch wheels on. He actually instead of the 7, it's just like it looks amazing. But real quick, one just sold. I was at the RM auction in Miami this weekend for like 2.9 something.
Yeah.
So it's like crazy that I don't know.
No, I think Bruce does amazing work. And he thinks
he really
like an
does.
engineer and a driver, and he's really serious.
And it's a good update to a.
It is. Especially since you're not getting the Denlock tires anymore, and
right.
And he's made it really invisible.
Yeah.
But
so why? It's an 825 version.
Right. Yeah.
And I asked him. I said, "Why this much power?" He goes, "Well, it was a race car."
Yeah.
And he goes, "They, Volta-Roll or whoever told me that they had designed it to handle 825 horsepower for the Group B car. It just never made it to production."
So I have a little sidebar story that goes with it. So
Please.
So as that's going on, I'm a young designer there, and I just, I never think enough is enough, and I just saw, this was the period of time when Porsche really was trying to figure itself out. And 959 was really key, and it didn't know it yet.
Right.
It was really the blueprint. And so I was really frustrated. Even after I was there for, about a year, I was really frustrated. And so, I decided, I take matters into my own hands. And so I started a concept at my apartment. And it's nicknamed the kitchen model. And within the designers of Porsche, they know what the kitchen model is. And so I took with another designer, Steve Merkett, and two of the modelers that I worked with, the clay modelers, and two Swedish modelers. And we met at my house every Thursday night, and we worked on this thing. And it became a modern Spider.
Right.
Right, and it was small, and so what was interesting though is that we brought, I went up to Tony Lapine after we had it finished, and I told Tony, I said, "Hey Tony, a couple of us been working, a few of us, on a concept at my apartment. We'd love to share it with the studio," and he goes, "Well, just bring it on in," and I go, "No, I don't want to just bring it on in. What I want to do is present it properly to the studio." And so we had it all. It was silver. It's just.
How big is this model?
It's about this big.
Okay.
Yeah. So 3 feet long, something like that. It's quarter scale model.
Yeah. Quarter scale.
Still advanced for today. It was very much RSK, kind of styling. This is like 1985, 1984, and so we set a date. And we had the conference room. We invited everybody in the studio up there. We kept it covered. Everybody was so curious to see what this thing looked like. And so we still had some of the modelers, the clay modelers that went back to the late 1950s that had worked on the 356s
Wow.
through the early 911s, all the way up to 959 and 928 and so on. And so we unveiled it. And we're showing off the packaging of it. It's mid-engined. It was flat six. It was, just beautiful little canopy on it that came off, so on and so. The concept was that it had a roof system with a hardtop or a zip-off top, which later went on the Panamericana, and Steve Merkett designed the Panamericana, and it went from that to being 2 to 3 hours of debate of why we can't do these things in the studio. And it was really great. It was really impactful. And so then when Tony Lapine...
And real quick, that's to do that, to have that reaction in Germany is different than in another country.
Right.
Because it's very...
And there's a lot of TT in this concept, too.
What do you mean why we can't do this in this? Why did it take you guys to do it outside of
Skunk Works project?
Yeah, it's more of a Skunk Works, and the irony was that Tony Lapine came out of the Skunk Works, and so the studio had become program, scheduled, so there was nothing to do outside of that. About 6 months before that, I typed up a paper, about 2 to 3 week sabbatical for a designer, an engineer, and a modeler to work together on a concept, and so that they could present these concepts to the leadership to show new ideas. And I did that with Wolfgang Mobius, Dick Zoderberg, Tony Lapine, and Peter Reisinger. They were the leadership of the studio. And they just sort of entertained me, and here I was, just this young guy.
Because you had nothing to present to them.
I had no credibility.
Oh, that's, yeah. And you're 23, 24, 25, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a young guy, and so I didn't see that going any further. So then I thought, we'll do it ourselves. And then the irony of it was that when Tony Lapine retired, Harm Lagai came in, and Harm Lagai cleared out the whole cellar of everything except for that model.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And did that become the Boxster?
It's very similar. It's very similar, RSK kind of thing.
I was going to ask you 2 questions. One, where's the half cut that you cut in, and where's this quarter scale kitchen concept?
So I still have what we did was took a mold off of it, and we made four bodies off of it, and I still have the original. And I have it it's packed away.
Right.
If you were to go to my house, I have nothing of my own stuff on display. I just don't.
But where's the half of the 959?
It went away. It went away. Yeah. It was just, but for a while, that half of that wing was sitting behind my desk. The body was sitting outside. But
what could you do?
Young and stupid.
Well, so. Listen, we're both born in the 70s. You basically talk about designing the cars of our childhood.
I mean, the 959.
The 959 Porsche.
I drove one. It was a museum car. It was like the last pre-production car before the first production car. But I was in tears driving it. I was literally in tears. Like it was.
Again, the mythology does. It says one thing, but it never was sold in the U.S. What was the actual response in the marketplace once it came out as a production vehicle?
It was controversial. In some publications, looked at it and they said, well, the front doesn't match the back. But it was an engineering study. You have to understand that, and this is why I went to Porsche. It was because right after that, I went to work for Dick Soderbergh, who is probably the most brilliant designer to have been at Porsche. Designed 9 Porsche race cars. 9083 through to Moby Dick to whatever. But to work for him and then to work under Wolfgang Moebius and all of those guys, they're the best teachers in the world.
Sure.
And so what I saw, though, is that the 959, through its production process, Helmut Bott, basically gave the directive to keep the doors, keep the roof, and even wanted to keep the hood. And so a couple things happened where, typical Porsche fashion, you do your engineering, you get the track out, you get the packaging out, and then you have to start to do the aerodynamics around all of this. And so the front, all of this evolved in a very engineering but design-led kind of way. And so it became just like the original 911 or the 356, where they were controversial in their time.
Yeah, yes.
And the 959 was really controversial. And the first 959s had wheel covers on them.
Right.
Because the Group B study had a wheel cover. But when you reduce that wheel cover down to its functional parts, it looked ugly.
Right.
And so the engineers it would be driving it just with these raw Speedline wheels that weren't designed. And so then Dick Soderbergh, started to design the 959 wheel based off of that. So it was an evolution.
It's still my favorite wheel. Just that black 5-spoke.
Oh, yeah.
It's just perfect.
So did you, speaking of race cars and
hang on real quick.
we're going to go, I got 2 questions.
I just want to say, but the importance of what you're saying is when I did drive that 959, I drove up in a 992 Carrera 4 or Carrera 4S, and 450 horsepower. 959 is 450 horsepower. Twin turbo V6, all-wheel drive. You know what I mean? It's like it became the normal Porsche. It just took 35 years to get there, but that 959 paved the way for everything.
Yeah.
Well,
right after
adjustable dampers, on and on and on.
Yeah. So right after that, I was put into Dick Soderbergh's studio, and then we started on a project. It's called 965, and 965 is not what everybody knows. It's the turbo version of a 964. 965 was taking everything from 959 and all-wheel drive. It had the water-cooled heads. It had it was twin turbocharged. It was had the wing on the back, all of that. But we developed it for production, and so
Right.
So we had in Dick Soderbergh's studio, we had a guy named Roland Sternman. We had Steve Merkett and myself, and we worked on that project. And then at the same time, we're working on 964. And so that the sad part about that is that the economy and the climate at Porsche was really tough, because they just didn't have the money.
Right, and it was all leading to the early '90s recession, anyways. Where things got really bad.
And then what's really interesting is that most of 965, including the headlights and the front, it made it into 993. If I showed you renderings of 965, you'd think it was 993.
Gotcha.
And yet this was 993 didn't come out until 94.
Right.
In Europe, and this is in 85.
Oh wow. That's crazy.
So did you do any of the race
car? We're gonna
car?
have to have him back just to get to the Ford section.
I know. Did you do any of the race car liveries when you were there?
Let me think.
Did you do 959 the Perry Dakar, the Rothmans one?
No. That was those were done by most of them were done by Ginger Austell, Arnold Austell. So Arnold or Ginger ran the interior design studio.
Okay.
And he did Safari Car. He did Boss 962, and then we had another designer. I'm just trying to remember his name. It'll come back to me.
First miss of all the name dropping he's done. This is amazing.
Yeah. But he did he did the shell car.
Okay.
And it's really, my forte. And I did do one graphic on one of the cars. It was for an Apple car.
You did the Apple car?
Well, it was an Apple 944.
Yeah.
And so
those are amazing liveries.
Yeah. So
well, I was only asking about the 959, the Rothman's livery, and the fact that it's the car. Oh, because we're a month after this is recorded now in the late December of 2022.
Mid-December, yeah.
Because it's going to air farther out. But we're basically a month after the debut of the new Dakar.
Yes.
Which had the
rough road, horrible.
Rob Powell's the guy's name I was talking about. So Rob did a lot of the graphics.
What's your reaction when you see this return or this Dakar?
I look at it. I look at it through two different lenses. One is that I know what it takes to do a OEM production car.
Right.
And
it's about 100,000 times more than people think.
Yeah, and then if you were to do something like a roof or a Singer or something like that, you don't have to comply with all of the pedestrian rules and all of that, warranty issues, stuff like that. So I think it's really well done. I'm a real fan of the 992. I think it's a
great car.
It's just a dynamic car to drive. I think that if you were to put that in the hands of someone in the niche, and they could do whatever they want, it would be a different animal.
Well, did you see I call them the volcano climbers, but those two portal axle 992s they sent out with Roman Dumas, the race car driver. They climbed up a 19,000-foot volcano.
Yeah, crazy.
Balloon tires. I'm like, that's what it should have looked like. That was awesome.
Yeah. There's no two designers that would do the same thing.
Sure.
Sure. And if you could, it's just like a 911 Safari. The rules were different back then. You could not build a let's say a 911 SC or Carrera Safari even back then and make it meet the rules.
Right.
But the aftermarket can't.
Right.
Okay, we spent a lot of time in Porsche.
But
and I cut you off because you were talking about how you got a call from Jay Mays, and initially he was really nice over the phone, and then next thing you know, you're over there.
Well, no, I'm in Europe, and it would go to design parties and things like that, and he was a bit aloof. Okay. And why not? And so I'm just this guy that is sleeping on my mattress, in a small apartment in outside of Isaac, and so I'm a nobody then, and but my credibility keeps building. As I'm going through, I'm the guy that just steadfastly will do it, and I believe in the mantra that you don't have to have the best talent in the world. You just have to have the passion,
just keep at
it, and then be able to have a vision for how to do something. So the one of the two modelers that I did the kitchen model with, his name is Banked. And he's working directly for Jay Mays at Audi. And, Jay is looking for, they're going to create the studio out in California. And he asked Bank, who should I, have as my right hand? And Bank kept going, it's got to be Freeman.
Interesting.
So he calls me up, and I'm back at Porsche again doing projects. And he calls up, and I'm out in California, and I turn him down,
Right.
and he goes, do you mind if I call you again next week? And I go, sure, no problem. He calls me again next week, and I go, no, and then we found out that my wife was pregnant, and being back in California, health insurance, all that stuff sounded really good.
Yeah.
So, and then, so I agreed to meet him when I was back in Germany. We went down to Ingolstadt. And I remember going through the studio. This is when A8 hadn't come out yet. They had it in the studio, and they had a lot of other concepts in the studio.
And for the people listening real quick, like Audi was a kind of a basket case brand back then.
Yeah,
they had
Ferdinand Piëch was running it.
Right.
And but I walked through, and I just said to myself, it's kind of boring stuff. This stuff looks really boring. I mean, technically, aluminum, monocoque construction,
Sure.
quattro, just insane stuff, but kind of boring. And so
wait, does that mean boring? There's opportunity here, or man, I don't want to be a part of this?
no. But if you look at my career, I go into companies that need help.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And that's where the opportunity is. I would give that advice to any designer. Don't go to a company that has it figured out.
Right.
Go to a company that is trying to figure it out.
Don't go to Ferrari.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah.
So
add another crease. Yeah.
yeah. So Jay and I get along really well. Matter of fact, probably the best design relationship in my career because we could finish each other's sentences.
And you guys, I mean, just for anyone listening who's not a design geek, like I consider myself to be, I mean, you it's hard to mention Jay Mays without Freeman Thomas and vice versa. Just in the lore and the lexicon of
what's
this
the age
industry.
gap in you guys?
About a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And he was just out here, and so we worked together. I actually have him on the advisory board now of Meyers Manx, and
nice.
and I put him to work for 10 days.
So you talked earlier about what your superpower is. What was Jay's superpower to be in his position to hire you, but only being a couple years older?
Well, so Jay is an amazing presenter. He also has great vision, and he's really not the atypical car guy.
Right.
He loves architecture. He loves art. He loves process. He loves the story, and I think that's what, as he went through. I mean, he did the Audi Avus with Martin Smith. I mean, just incredible stuff. So he's insanely talented.
Who's a better sketcher?
Yeah. I would say that I'm a better conceptual sketcher than he. I'm quicker. I'm faster. I just don't. I don't like to render it out to the nines. I'd rather just do very quick, color. Just get it going.
But he was. I mean, when I think of Jay Mays, what he's good at is eye for talent, like the design.
Oh
team
yeah, the team that he would put together.
at Ford.
Yeah,
I mean,
from Henrik Fisker to Ian Callum. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you could stop with those two.
Yeah.
but I mean,
and so we got along really well. We brainstormed the Concept 1 Beetle together. Audi TT.
Can we stop about?
Yeah.
Stop. Okay. So you guys famously designed the new Beetle.
Concept 1.
Concept 1.
Yeah.
There's no. How do I put it? Like what? What was that like? Like, first of all, what gave you the right to think you could, like, hey, let's just make a new version of the most iconic car on earth?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun. We'll do it.
Well,
I know you worked at Audi Volkswagen,
but the culture at that time at leadership. So we were at Audi.
Yeah,
I remember we did that
That's
under
why
Audi.
I said what gives you.
So the climate for that at Volkswagen was really dismal. And a couple of things were going on is that Volkswagen was ready to pull out of the market at around 92.
The U.S. market.
Yeah. And in Audi, we had Hartmut Varkas as our head of design, who's an amazing individual, really visionary. And we had Ferdinand Piëch still at Audi.
Right.
And we came up with a concept, and we did basically a design brief. We call it Project Lightning Bug, because there was a brief to come in with a zero-emission vehicle for California, even back then.
Yeah.
And so we came up with a concept that was a fully electrified Volkswagen Beetle.
Right.
And so we presented this to Hartmut Varkas. Hartmut Varkas loved it, and he said, look, I'm going to confide in you. He said, Ferdinand Piëch is going to be moving and take over as chairman of the full Volkswagen group, and then I'm going to follow him, Hartmut, to take over the Volkswagen group, all of design. And so what he did was he gave us a secret budget. It was $300,000. And
Which can't have been anything.
No, nothing. And so we did things step at a time. So at first we created scale models. Jay and I worked together. We shared ideas, put together an amazing presentation of the how Volkswagen, when it came to America, where it started, it's how it rose to its success, and then it fell off because of that. Just didn't understand the American market, didn't understand the customer.
Right.
And so, with the scale models, with the presentation, he shared it with Ferdinand Piëch. Ferdinand Piëch loved it, and because he's in his new role, Porsche family, with the history with the Beetle, he gave us the green light to start a full size. And so we're you got to remember, we're on the Audi side of the studio. Simi Valley, we had this Jack and Jill door between the Volkswagen side and the Audi side. We had on the other side of the studio, had Franz von Holzhausen on the Volkswagen side.
Right.
We had a couple other people over there, and we're over here where it's Jay and myself, another designer, Craig Durfee, and who did the original Viper.
Yeah.
And so we're building this model, and we're getting into the full size. And then the person, so we have the full size.
And at this point, the full size is still intended to be a zero emissions electric car.
Zero emissions electric vehicle, right?
Oh, okay.
Built on a skateboard.
Yeah.
Right? In the body pounds composite.
And this is like 90.
We started it in 93.
Yeah.
Okay.
It conceptualized it in 92, got the green light in 93, and then we accelerated it. And then as we're getting closer and closer, the person that was leading the Volkswagen side of the studio went back to Germany. And so I saw the talent. We had Derek Jenkins was a young designer then.
So for everyone listening real quick, Franz is the head designer at Tesla. Derek is the head designer at Lucid.
We had Derek on.
Yeah.
We're trying to get Franz
I mean,
on.
these are like talented,
really
real
talented
powerhouses.
So Jay at that time, it was asked by Hartmann Varkas to take over all of design for Audi. So Jay had to go over to Ingolstadt months on end.
Right.
And so I'm there working, and then I thought, I'm going to bring Franz in, I'm going to bring Derek in. I set up this table on with a couple of sawhorses, just a 4x8 sheet, and they would come to me with stuff. I go, okay, you're going to do the back lock mechanism. You're going to do this. I sketched up the interior at home, and we mocked that up. We started putting all this stuff together. And this is where, designed the logo with the three arches. That was Jay, and then, came up with the whole presentation for the Detroit Auto Show. Very modern, succinct, and really was a blueprint probably for the rest of our careers.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's and then so at what point did it switch to, it's going to be gas, it's going to be built on
So we the model that we did is called it literally just had a little golf cart motor in it, the one that you see it.
Yeah, sure.
So you could drive it around, film it, and things like that. And then Volkswagen asked, okay, we want to show 3 different drivetrains. So we showed a gasoline drivetrain, we showed a hybrid diesel electric. And then we showed an electric, and we showed it as basically just the front clip of the drivetrain with the wheels on it for the display. So to show the vision of this. But even at that time, we had one of the heads of Volkswagen. So you have to remember the climate was that even at Volkswagen of America, they took a Volkswagen Beetle before this thing started and put it in the middle of a stadium and burned it. Literally, like, this car is dead. Don't even talk about it anymore. Don't do anything with it.
Right.
And so we just saw that as a challenge. Said, we're doing this thing. And so there was
that's crazy.
Yeah. So there was one of the heads of engineering of Volkswagen. His name was Dr. Seifert, and Dr. Seifert was forced to give the presentation at Detroit. And even as he would come into the studio for the Volkswagen side, he was just awful person, just the kind of person that would keep Volkswagen from getting to where they needed to go with the American market for decades.
Right.
Well,
for decades.
This doesn't make sense to me. Like, you had the support of Piëch.
Yeah.
But this guy Seifert,
he was very powerful. But because we had the power of Piëch, it just vetoed everything.
Right.
So against his will, he would have to present this thing that you're building and try to sell it?
No, he didn't try to sell it. So he goes, you go to the Detroit Auto Show 94, January 94. It's snowing. It's the year of Nancy Kerrigan getting her knees whacked. We're at the Renaissance Center. And so
I can picture it. It all sounds really
beautiful snow. Detroit is wonderful, and
brown snow.
Yeah, so the presentation we did this video, and I and Jay storyboarded this video, and it made people cry. in the audience. All the journalists were there. They were crying. And Seifert did a speech in a very typical German, very cold.
Welcome from my side.
Yeah. But this video offset it.
Right.
And so it was time for them to go to the next press, release. They would not leave. The press would not leave. They were there for hours.
Right. Wow.
And basically demanding that this car be built.
Right.
And so, and then when it went to Wolfsburg for development, it had Peter Schreier. So Peter was running the studio over there, and then so Peter ran the production part of that program.
Good Lord, this is all a heavy hitter.
Yeah,
it's the heaviest.
So, so let me just a quick pause. What Piëch is infamous. What was it?
Infamous.
What was it like? Because you had him basically the earliest.
Yeah.
Like, what was he like as the early Piëch before he was like the Dark Overlord?
Well, so I got a lot of stories from Dick Soderbergh, and so. When he was there in 1969, so and that's when design was in Zuffenhausen, and Piëch was relentless. He was the same all the way through. So so on the 917 program, he had all the engineers lay out in one of the workshops every single part of the 917. From the chassis to the engine to every connecting rods, every single part of it, and he would go up and with a pointer and say, how much does this weigh, and then he would demand that it be made out of titanium or this or light. It must be this many grams lighter and so forth. And he would do that even when we were presenting to him at Volkswagen. He would go through a W8 engine or a W12 motor, and you'd see these engineers sweating, walking up, having to present to him. We had to do it as designers. And he would say, I want more chrome here. I want this like this. It was.
Did he have would you say he had a good design sensibility?
Oh, insane. Because we, with Hartmut Varkas, we had the perfect, you would not, I had interactions with Piëch, but it was very, I had to really be formal, try to speak my best German.
Right. Oh, yes, very important.
Yeah. And expect that it would not go well.
Yes. I've heard this. I used to know his former secretary. She was.
but he's a legend, and so there are very few legends in the industry of that caliber. And
I always tell people too, like if you look at what I consider the real Piëch era, which was like when the Veyron got going, and then you had the Phaeton and the Touareg, like those things. Yeah. There's a quality to those cars which has never been seen before.
Never.
Like when you release the parking brake on the Touareg, it's got a damper on it, so it doesn't pop up.
Well,
fast.
It's like he had a Cayman built with a flat 8.
Yes.
And that car still exists. It has never been shown.
And he was always though. He was. I remember very vividly. I went to Wolfstadt, and I walk out of the little museum there, and they have two glass cases, and there's a 917 motor. And then there's the VW 1 liter car that got 200.
Yes.
And I'm like, the same guy. Like,
well, it's because it's because it's pure efficiency and performance of the two ends of the bookends,
yes.
right? And I think as designers, to be a good designer, you've got to be able to do that as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And so, but I remember walking out, I'm looking at these, I'm like, every other car company has no chance because, like, imagine, like, at the time, I think like Wagner was running GM.
But without Ferdinand Piëch, we would not have the new Beetle.
Right.
Without Ferdinand Piëch, we would not have the Audi TT.
We got to do the TT because I think when they write the book about you, it's TT is going to be, and I'll start it off by saying I had a boss back before I was in the car business, and she's telling me the story. She and her husband, they saw the TT, they had to get it. The only one at the dealership was a manual. Neither could drive manual, but they bought it anyways, and they trucked it to their house and they dropped it off, and they spent 2 days like ruining the clutch and then got rid of it. But I always use that story to explain the power of good design. Here's something someone can't even use. They had to have it, and that so I always love that first TT. It's just like a design.
Yeah. I mean, it rarely happens. to be able to, take something from a sketch through the whole design process and to have it, be as pure as the concept.
So so Zort told me the story, but how, like, this was something you drew, this is your car.
Yeah. So, and this story goes back, through my philosophy of design. And I think it's really, when I came into Audi, designing things for Porsche had a certain sense of whimsy about it. That's just Erwin Commenda developed that with the 356 and the Beetle, and there's a certain line that is whimsical. And J. Mays is very Bauhaus, the way his thinking is and so forth. And I think I was really good at absorbing every single person that was a mentor to me,
right?
When Tony Lapine, Helmut Bott, everybody, and so you're evolving as a designer. So I always had this idea in my head of this very German Teutonic machine, and so I had been developing it, and then but never to a point yet. And so when Jay went over to Audi, Jay went up to me and said, "Look, Freeman, kind of like the early coming to Audi story. I want you to come with me and be my right hand at Audi." And he asked to meet me down in Malibu at Neptune's Net. And so I sat there and I thought, gosh, it was really hard getting back into the States and getting back into, paying my taxes and getting a bank account and getting credit and all the other stuff. And I know if I left again, and I wouldn't be able to really come back. And so I said, I really, I told him that, and he was really kind of angry with me, and he said, okay. So we left, parted, and then he came back a few days later, and he goes, "Would you be willing to go on a long business trip?" And I go, "Yeah, I have no problem doing that." So, anyways, he's over there running design at Audi. I go over there, and quickly they want to get me an apartment, and so I'm looking around and I find this brand new apartment in the neighboring village, and I go through the IKEA catalog, and it has someone working with me, and I just go, I want that page, that page, that page,
Evar
that
desks.
yeah. So they fully furnished this apartment. It looked like it came out of IKEA. The kitchen, you open it up, all the white plates. I even had a small bed for my daughter, things like that. So it was perfect. And so I'm in the studio. This is literally after I'm there maybe about 3 weeks or something like that. And I'm sitting at my drawing table in the studio, and I just sketch this little thing out. It's about this big. And Jake comes by my desk, and he says, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, it's just a concept I'm playing with." He goes, "Can I borrow that?" I go, "Sure, just go ahead, take it, It's just a scratched piece of paper,
Right.
And so he goes, and he comes back in a couple hours. He goes, I shared your concept with Dr. Pefkin. Dr. Pefkin.
I know Dr. Pefkin.
Yeah. So he said he fell in love with your concept, and he goes, wants you to build it. and then Jay goes, but we can't do it in the studio. This is completely secret. And so he goes, shortly you're going to meet an engineer in the hallway. And so we're sitting out in the hallway, sitting on these little chairs. And I'm talking to him, and his name is Ralph Vilner, and bright red hair, So a really skinny guy, brilliant. I ended up, I would call him the rocket scientist, And so we really got along, and that's part of my superpower also is to translate design with engineering, and otherwise you have nothing. And so Ralph would go through and he said, I can do this. Well, can you do that? Can you do that? Yes, I can do this. And it was on the golf platform. Right. So
what can I just interrupt? What was the sketch? Was it? Did it have the original roll hoop? Did it have what were the elements?
Okay. The first sketch was the car. It was a front 3/4.
Okay.
It had the headlights. It had the roll hoop. It had the windshield. It had the wheel arches. It had everything on it.
It was, and you drew it as a convertible. You drew it
at first as a convertible.
Right.
All right. So then, Jay says you have to work on this at your apartment. You can't work on it.
This is what Jeff told me.
Yeah. So they sent that same day. They sent a drawing table to my apartment, and so he says you have 2 weeks. You have to come up with a full presentation. We're going to give a presentation to Ferdinand Piëch.
And are they expecting you to come into the office during these 2 weeks? Or?
Yeah, I had to go. I worked on it at night, So then,
so where was Pefkin in relation to Piëch?
So Pefkin at that point was head of development for Audi. He wasn't yet
Bugatti.
the chairman of Audi yet.
Okay.
All right.
Right, but then after, so then after Audi, he went to Bugatti.
Yeah.
And
So,
Bentley.
but why did it need to be done off the books? Like, why were they trying to hit Piëch with this thing over the head?
No,
basically?
because they wanted to keep it secret from everybody, from engineering, from design.
Meaning Jay didn't want that sketch changed.
No, well, Dr. Pefkin didn't.
Dr. Pefkin. Yeah,
And so then I worked with.
And real quick, if for people listening, if you don't know Dr. Pefkin, I mean, he's like one of those masters of the universe types, like the largest person in the room. Just when he talks, you listen to
Yeah. And so then the head of advanced engineering was Dr. Ulrich Hockenberg.
Yes.
And so then Hockenberg,
smartest person I've ever met.
Ralph Vilner, Pefkin, and then Jay and myself. And so then literally
this is ridiculous.
within a week, of working, then. I've got things to a point where I like it. Everything's going, and then they set up in the village of Geimersheim. There's a company called Udelhofen, and it builds all of the prototypes and things like that for Audi. And they set up a room upstairs in a loft. They put down a floor. They put an air conditioner in it. Put a drawing table. Put modeling table in there. I'm in there by myself, and so then. I pick 2 modelers. The other Swedish modeler that I worked with at Porsche, Anders, and another guy, Dave Morris. Dave is now the head of modeling for Tesla. He works hand in hand with Franz. All right,
I've met him.
And so I have literally
he did the semi, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's done everything there.
Okay, yeah.
And Dave is amazing. He's a workhorse. And I worked with him at Porsche when he was a clay modeler. And so then we literally have a week to do a quarter-scale clay model to present to Piëch. And so we're doing this thing. I've got this thing all roughed in. It's the TT. There it is.
Right.
But it's a spider version. And I did another sketch, and again this time, rear three-quarter with the roof.
Okay.
And along with some other sketches. And there's a private review with Jay, Dr. Hockenberg, Dr. Pefkin, and with Piëch. And as it was explained to me, I was waiting outside, and then they came back. And
real quick, Hockenberg. I don't know where to start with this guy. No, but hang on. No. But like he came up with like the VW Group toolkits. So
yes, the MEB platform, everything.
The smartest automotive engineer maybe ever.
He is a brilliant, enthusiastic, passionate, about motorcycles, cars.
Hockenberg.
Yeah. So
I just want everyone listening to know who these names are.
Anyways, they come out.
Yeah.
And they tell me, okay, Piëch's reaction. He goes, he loves the concept. He goes, but I want a coupe. I want this coupe. So, they pointed to the sketch, and so that kind of inked it in.
Right.
So then I started developing the coupe idea. And then Pefkin comes back as we're working on it, and he goes, for this program to succeed, we have to do this with Porsche. And Porsche will do their version, we'll do our version.
Oh.
Okay, and so and it's enough years later now that I can tell the story. So I'm doing the TT, and I know Porsche, so I do a part spin approach with the body, So I have my doors, I have this, and I do a Porsche front, I do a Porsche rear. I have on the scale model, I have the 5-spoke cup wheels on it, everything's there, and then. I do the Audi versions, Audi's all there, and I do the coupe version as well. So I do 2 spiders and a coupe,
right.
And these models are gorgeous. They're painted, the headlights work, instrument lights work, and I'm told that we're going to do a presentation with Porsche in Ingolstadt in the studio, all walled off. I did my renderings. We had a full-size rendering, did all of our engineering drawings with Ralph Vilner. Porsche came in. They were a little bit lazy. and arrogant. They put down their drawings. So we had Harmla Guy come in with their versions, and a couple designers that I know did their versions. I sketched out because I knew who the designers were, and I showed Jay, this is what they're going to do, and that's what he's going to do.
Opposition research.
Yeah, and I just know, and so the meeting doesn't go well because Ralph Vilner is going through the packaging, and it's like, it's just going through the stages. Their engineers are just fumbling around and looking at stuff,
but also Porsche doesn't want a front-wheel drive anything.
Well, it's all-wheel drive.
Front-wheel drive base.
And so then it doesn't go well, and then so they leave. We go back. We kind of regroup and everything else. And then, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks go by, and we're working on the full size of the model. So we have a studio at Udelhofen. I'm working on the full size, and putting it together. And it's the coupe version. And Dr. Pefkin has a meeting at Porsche in Weizsäck, and talking about the whole program. And he comes in and he says, meeting didn't go well. He goes, Porsche says if we do an Audi, the Audi can only have 135 horsepower. The Porsche version will be all-wheel drive, and it will be 225 horsepower and all the other stuff, right? And so Pefkin says he told Porsche the project is off, and then he tells me we're going to Frankfurt.
Wow.
So wait, I got a couple questions.
Okay.
So first, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why these Pefkin and Piëch are need to do this. These guys are like the biggest dudes in the room, and they have all the budget. Why they're trying to get this thing done like skunk work style?
Because there's a lot of politics in those companies. There's a lot of people that will sabotage, and it's that way in the industry. I can, every single company I've worked at,
So it has nothing to do with you being an American.
No. Matter of fact, I think that Audi and Volkswagen, it was international. It was so good. Even at Porsche, we had people from all over, and when you got to that level, it was like, you're so accepted. If you're a great engineer, you're a great engineer.
Gotcha.
You're
That's a good. I was just gonna say, did you feel like you were being taken advantage of? Like they're like, hey, do your day job and then go jump.
No, not at all. I was elevated to a level that you could only dream of.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, come on.
And I was treated with even when I went to Volkswagen. It was
whatever this guy wants, right?
Well, to a point, and I made him pay my house payments while I was over in Germany.
I love it. Good for you.
Nice.
Good for you.
So then, okay, but that was part of the question that Johnny opened the door on, which is it fair to say that do they look to American designers like you, and you brought over folks like you work with Derek and Franz? Is there do I have that wrong? Is that do American designers have an outside influence? Like basically, why wouldn't they have turned to some homegrown German dude to help?
No, they had in the studio. I can honestly say there was no favoritism with as far as cultures. I think there was favoritism with talent.
Yeah, sure.
If you were talented, you quickly rose, and you were given the resources, and if you didn't have the talent, you didn't.
Okay, I have two real specific TT questions. So one is the TT, and also a lot of the kind of the late '90s VW concepts, which I'm sure you were involved with. How much were you looking at Auto Union 1930s stuff?
Yeah, it's part of it because if you look at Erwin, the story of Erwin Commenda designed the original Auto Unions.
Yeah.
So what I was doing was I was transcending myself and looking at what would Erwin Commenda do today. And then I was looking at the Bauhaus. I was looking at, but Jay and I coined it warm Bauhaus. So
do you think that's why Jay picked up that sketch, because there is a real Bauhaus design ethos to the TT.
Yeah, it was also something that was because Bauhaus is modern,
Right.
and it's minimalist and it's simple, and the thing is that Audi, needed to have something to communicate. Even though this was based off of Volkswagen Golf platform, it probably communicated Quattro and Auto Union and Audi.
Yeah.
It was a complicated history,
Right.
and this concept put all of those pieces together.
Well, it also, look, just to go there, this was a way to take what was good about the 1930s in Germany, because most of it was really bad, and bring that forward. You know what I mean?
I
that's
think
maybe why Pefkin and Piëch were so into it.
I think there's different sides. So you have the scientist, you have the engineer, you have the designer, you have the artist. And I think they're apolitical. They're
Yes,
looking
I
at
agree.
it purely from the standpoint of technology and design and execution. And I think that's why you have so many engineers that came over here after the war.
Sure.
With the space program and things like that.
Well, they might have given some benefits too.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, okay. And then my other question is, okay, we got to talk about. We can't talk about the TT, the baseball glove leather.
Yeah.
Was that you?
yes, yeah. So
How did you get that to happen?
I did a sketch, and so the first concept was the coupe that we showed in Frankfurt, and then the second concept was the Spider that we were going to show in Tokyo, and I rendered this thing up in very slate gray and so forth, and so I had an idea that, and this was a picture going through my head at that time, as I was picturing Munich. This period of time, seeing the influence of American culture coming into Germany, into a place like Munich, and what I wanted to do was mix Lodenfrei. Lodenfrei is the traditional Bavarian Austrian clothing with felt and gray felt and green felt and so forth, and mix it with this American culture. And so the idea of the baseball glove is because the slate gray and this warm brick-colored leather worked together so well. And I saw a baseball glove, and I thought it would be so cool to have that kind of stitching on it. And so I went into Big Five Sporting Goods in Thousand Oaks.
That's where I'm from. Yeah, nice.
And I found this perfect glove.
Right.
And I brought this glove over, and then
Was it a Rawlings?
I still have it, and I have to look. I have to look because So. But anyways, that's where it came from. But I also understood that the Germans had a very negative approach to anything that felt military.
Yes,
And
they
so,
still do.
So I wanted to create this warm concept, and that's what the baseball glove did in this concept.
Got it. And was there pushback about cost? Because the TT was, a relatively cheap vehicle, but I imagine you had to have very unique, I don't know if the tooling's the right word, but to get the big stitching like that.
Well, so this was interesting. So when I was at the Detroit show with the concepts, and Harmla guy, is still at Porsche, and he comes over and he sits inside the concept with me, and he's playing with the vents that are beautiful aluminum, and everything's aluminum. And he goes, you're never going to get this into production, but that's really where Hockenberg and Pefkin, they're because they engineered and designed to a standard, not to a price.
Right.
And that's where Audi was at that point, with its interior design, with exquisite details.
And that was the early kind of stab at doing the toolkits. So you were able to iterate the golf platform. And so 60% of the cost was done.
Yes.
So you could flourish.
You had all your crash. You had, but what was interesting is having the creativity of like a Ralph Vilner. And I remember originally, on the clay model, I had where on the hood it has these little grooves going down it. I had the shut lines way inboard,
okay,
kind of 928 style, where it was way inboard going through those grooves. And he goes, we can't do it this way because the golf platform has a suspension and everything. And I had this line on the side, and I go, what about the side? He goes, oh, no problem there. And I go, even better.
Wow.
Huh. All right, we're in deep trouble because we're not even out of the Germans, and you have your entire career at DaimlerChrysler to talk about.
And Ford. I mean, isn't the current Mustang your design?
Well, partly. So yeah.
And we still got to talk about Meyers Manx.
I know. No, you're skipping my favorite. Hang on, the roof SCR. Which
we
do a whole program on that.
This is like
you have to come back. Sorry, Freeman.
Yeah,
but let's talk Meyers. We'll talk. We'll come back. We'll start with the Charger and the 300, and then go to Ford, and then and then we got to talk Manx.
Yeah.
So Manx, you're the CEO of a car company.
Yeah. So the story with that goes back to the mid '90s. So in the mid '90s. Like 96, 97, 98, 99, I'm running the Volkswagen side of the studio now in Simi Valley. And I was a huge, fan of Bruce Meyers.
Sure.
And so there was an opportunity I got to meet him. And we really got along. And I thought, he was in his 60s at that time. And I thought, wow, I had been playing with some Meyers Manx concepts. And I thought, I'd love to just bring him in the studio and just get his ear, and see what he thought of these.
So what, as a designer, what's so, because I've had a lot of designers, and Derek Jenkins being one of them, just go wax on about the Manx. Like, what is so wonderful about that design from a designer's point of view?
It's so endearing. The whole concept, there's not another concept or vehicle that makes you smile and is so playful, yet it's so serious.
Right.
Bruce was an intuitive designer. His background was as an artist.
He's a fine artist, right?
And as a boat builder. He understood fiberglass. He built boats for Jensen out of fiberglass. Did it with his own hands.
Wow.
And he was a surfer. He was a lifeguard. So he's living in Newport Beach, California.
So there's that Southern California zeitgeist.
Yeah, and he's living in Newport Beach on Lido Island. And he's literally right next to the cannery. At that time there's boathouses and sheds and so forth. He has one of these boathouses, and he starts creating this concept. But first he goes out to Pismo Beach, and he sees these big water pumper dune buggies, big V8s, going up and down the dunes, and then he sees this chassis of a Volkswagen Beetle with a guy on it, with nothing on it, and it goes up and down so easily
because it's light.
And he sits there and he starts sketching this idea, but because he's an intuitive engineer at the same time, he's the way the fenders come up, the way all of that, but he has this kind of whimsical character because of his fine art, illustration, figure drawing background, and he understood how to put this together. No automotive designer could have done that at that time.
Why not?
Outside of a Commenda, somebody like that, or maybe an Alec Izagonis.
So they would have made it like too. Oh, interesting. So they would have made it.
They would have styled it
too thick.
No, they would have styled it.
Okay.
And the Meyers Manx isn't styled. It's pure 100% function. And that's so that's what became popular because it had this look about it, and it got at Road and Track magazine, Elaine and John Bond, they helped name the car. Bill Neal, the artist, created the logo, so everything became iconic,
right?
And the whole process of the way the whole thing came together in the 60s, the way that it was like the Modernica chair, the way they could pop out of the mold and all of that. So it goes on till about 1970, and he's trying to sue the industry because everybody's copying him, including Sears and Roebuck. So he loses, and he basically goes into a state of depression. He's working for other people. He goes bankrupt. He invents the original fiberglass sauna, jacuzzi. He doesn't get anything out of that. He does the bed liner. He does the race car bed. He does all of that, and but it goes on for a long time where he's just sort of going from shop to shop, down in Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. And then fast forward with his sixth wife, Winnie, he, in the mid-'90s, he started, and when he came into the studio, we're talking and so forth, got friendship, and he stays with me for a couple days. Around 2000, and in the 90s, he's invited to France, to Le Mans, where there's a huge fan base for Meyers Manx.
Really?
And so there's like 500 Manxes and Manx clones that meet him there.
Oh,
wow. And so he sort of, is a different person at this time. He now embraces all the copies and everything else because he sees it that everybody's enjoying themselves.
Right.
And he especially respects the people that have done their own thing.
Right.
And so so then he comes back with the original Manx in 2000. He builds 100 of them. They sell out.
Yep.
And then he does the Manxster, and they come up with the Manx Club and all of that. And then and it goes on until literally around 2019. Yeah, 2018, 2019. I retired at the end of 2017 from Ford, and which I never looked at it as a retirement. I was just fed up with the corporate, process, and I felt I still have so much life. I looked at Frank Lloyd Wright and I thought, that guy did Falling Water, in his 60s and did the Guggenheim in his 90s.
Right. Yeah.
And so. Anyways, I'm driving through the Santa Monica Mountains, the canyons, with my wife and daughter, and I see a Meyers Manx coming out of nowhere, and I thought, oh my God, that thing is so amazing, and so I had become good friends with Philip Seraphim, working at doing stuff for Roof, and he was a client, a customer. And I was helping him with some of his venture capital, giving him my advice, what I would do on special things. And I told him about the experience, and he goes, "Wow, we should go down and visit them."
Okay, so a guy with a suitcase full of cash wants to go visit Manx. Yeah,
well, he's more than that.
No, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but no, he's a passion. He has a Manxster.
Okay.
And he's so anyway. So we go down. We had no intentions of going down and buying the company or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was more to go down there and talk to them and so forth. And then somehow the discussion started going into that direction. And Bruce looked at me and he said, the only person I want to sell the company is you. And I think that he felt that I would be very respectful to his legacy and his history.
Right.
And then, of course, Philip is an amazing individual. He's got, behind the scenes, he's got so much vision. He's impatient for the future. He's got a lot of portfolio companies going on, a lot of technologies. Right. And but this goes on for about, we could have done a deal quickly.
Right.
We decided not to. We actually spent about 2 years behind the scenes. We actually left for a while, and then we came back. And then I talked to Philip, and he said, you should call them. Just call them. So it was myself to call them and sort of reignite, our negotiations and stuff like that. And we came up with an agreement, and then I brought in our business team and everything else, to finalize the whole thing. But that was.
But what was the plan at that point? To buy the brand, to buy the name? When did the EV? When did it?
So I had always had a vision of doing. First of all, I love both. What's not to love about the classic Meyers Manx with Volkswagen air-cooled motor, the sound and everything on it. And so I didn't want to destroy that. But I also felt, I had started doing sketching of what the EV would look like, the Manx 2.0. And so the part was, we saw the vision in that this was a brand that was based off of pop culture. It was California. It was lifestyle. It wasn't a car company. It was a lifestyle company.
Right.
It was something that, Ferdinand Piëch had 2 Manxes.
No,
in 1966, he bought two 2 Manx kits when we were at Sebring. He saw the Manx and he bought 2 of the kits, and he had one built at Porsche in Zuffenhausen and the other one at Porsche Racing Salzburg for the Salzburg race team.
Right.
And the one was just recently found with all of its paperwork, and then now it's back with the Porsche family restored. You know,
it is what, like a shop car, just like
it got evolved it got modified through the years. It originally had a 912 engine in it. It had 356 GT seats. It had 356C brakes.
Piëch drove it.
Piëch drove it. The family drove it. Family drove it.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor is he was a real driver, Piëch. Like,
yeah, and so the Porsche family is they're super enthusiastic with Meyers Manx. But anyway, so the vision was that, you know, I saw early on at Volkswagen that this is big. This is big because, you know, Volkswagen had done their ID buggy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
you know,
sure.
And this was going on while we were doing negotiations, and I saw that thing come out, and I go, too bad, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
But anyways, so with the vision of the brand, the name. And then also the other products that were done, the Toad, B.F. Myers and Company, the Manxter, all of that, plus the whole lifestyle. And
But when did the EV part click for you?
In the beginning, before. It was before.
And you're saying that California has really embraced electricity.
Well, it's because we see this. I had this mindset that there would be Manx Classic and Manx Modern.
Yeah.
And as we evolved Manx Modern, I knew that this first product had to be almost indistinguishable from, except just more refined, more finished, more complete from the ground up.
Right.
You know, and it had to be lightweight as well. So, and by the way, tomorrow I'm driving the Mule. It's out of state, and we have it in the snow. And it weighs 1,500 pounds, under 1,500 pounds.
So it's an EV that weighs that. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, I was going to ask, where did the EV part click for you from an industry perspective, right? Because you left Ford in 2017.
Yeah. So already at Ford, I was running. I ended up running, you know, global advanced design. Mm-hmm. So it had our studios in Shanghai, in Dearborn, in London, and in Irvine. And so early on, EV started becoming a part of what we worked on.
Right.
We started working on autonomy. We started working on...
How early on were you talking?
I would say that we started working, you know, probably around 2009, around that time frame. Okay. But, you know, I think because of Tesla pushing and really kind of showing the way, with all of this, it pushed, you know, Ford to accelerate, and so, you know, and I think right now, you know, there's so much to learn still with the battery packs. There's energy storage systems that, you know, I heard with Byron that you were talking about lithium, iron, and solid state. Yeah. Well, there's a step even beyond that, and that's energy storage with nanotubes, and it's not batteries. It's
right.
So. What people, the electric motor is so efficient and so perfect and compact and lightweight.
It's perfect for cars.
The battery or the storage system has always been the stumbling block.
Right.
You know, and now with lithium ion, with a lightweight vehicle, you'll get amazing range. And then as we go, and already with plate-type battery packs, they get more compact, more lightweight. And then you're going to slowly start getting into storage systems.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's no longer a battery life. These things will last 50 years.
Right.
You know?
Did you ever talk shop about this kind of stuff with Franz and Derek?
Yeah, you know, because we're together a lot, you know, and, you know, and so... You know, and I know I'm going to a Christmas party at Dave Morris's on Saturday. So there's, you know, this is interesting stuff. But as much as this is interesting, I'm playing chess with myself with Manx Classic, and I'm actually taking the Manx 2.0 also and doing an internal combustion concept out of it. You know, so it's going to. I'll let the customer decide what they want.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I think this is officially now our longest episode we've ever done, and we've barely even scratched. I don't say scratch the surface, but let's get a couple just Manx specific. So when you're driving the mule tomorrow in the snow, out of state,
when does MotorTrend get to be one of the first beta testers?
And when can somebody listening buy one?
Well,
yeah,
I'll keep you guys posted definitely, because I think part of with the beta testing and all of that, as soon as we get through probably about five of our mule prototypes, the first one is testing the new suspension system.
Okay.
So nothing has changed on the design and size and all of that, but we've evolved the suspension system into the tub now, which is hidden, is full aluminum monocoque.
Okay.
It's got double A-arm suspension front and rear, electric steering. It's going to have, and we had an early mule that we started testing, and so we're going to see how much power to give this thing, because it's so light, and it's and the original Meyers Manx only had 40, 50 horsepower.
Right.
The base version of this will be about 150 horsepower.
So triple the power of the original.
Yeah, and
Will
so
it do a wheelie?
it will break the tires loose at 20 miles an hour, the way it's set up right now, and the front tires don't come off the ground.
Okay. Awesome. And then how is it going to be sold? Is it a low volume?
Yeah, that's the plan. Is low volume manufacturing.
Okay.
And so 325 a year. So that each one of them will have a value to itself, because we're going to make sure that the build quality and the construction and just the emotional attraction is going to be, it's going to exceed the concept.
Right.
For those listening at home, the low volume allows Meyers Manx then to be sold. Doesn't have to meet all of the normal standards and regulations for mass-produced vehicles.
Right. But what it does do is we have a conscience.
Yeah.
So and my daughter and my family and my friends will be driving this, and so just taking the OEM experience at our team. I've got now Frank Sacedo, who ran GM Advanced Design in California.
Oh, yeah.
He just retired, so now he's our COO.
Okay.
And he's helping me with all of the production engineering. I'm bringing in, my colleagues that I have a lot of respect for. It's like I have Jay now coming in. So I've got a lot of eyes, helping me. We sit like we're on a rowboat right now, and we're just rowing in the same direction.
But these are all people that really know how to build cars.
Know how to build cars, also know vision, as we're as I'm presenting strategy, I want them to shoot holes through it, and it's a team thing that we're doing, because as I'm bringing in younger designers. I was just up at Art Center yesterday, so we sponsored over the summer.
You're poaching?
Over the summer we sponsored their advanced transportation design class, and then the last semester that we just finished was their communication design. So we have them going through everything from our merchandising through our website, through everything, and bringing young, really super talented people. Now Jay is involved now with the RCA in London.
Royal College of Art.
Royal College of Art.
Get them involved, yeah.
And so this is a global thing. We just did a show in New York where we have the original. We own the original Thomas Crown Manx, and so we had it in New York City at a special event, and an art show, and just in the middle of winter, and it will be at the end of January. We'll be in Austria at the GP Ice Race. We were there last year with studded snow tires.
Right.
You've got to drive a Meyers Manx studded snow tires.
Take me with you. I'm there. Yeah. So when can I buy one?
Okay.
This is something I would buy.
So right now, we're slating production at some point in 2024.
Okay.
The beta test cars will be starting next year.
Okay.
We've got a long waiting list.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I know a guy or two. So.
Yeah. So and I never believed the people that would be pulling forward, name names that just are just trying to get in to get one.
Oh, sure.
And which this humble little company, and it's
awesome.
amazing. It's
great.
amazing.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, we're definitely then going to talk to you sometime next year, because it's already December, for an update, especially on the betas. And then we'll talk probably about the career arc, including DaimlerChrysler.
We really left off. Well, we didn't finish Audi the way I
Sure.
said.
So we'll finish Audi.
Roof is a fun one, though.
We'll talk about
Roof is really
I drove
fun.
the SCR with...
So we have at least two more installations. Because we'll talk about the beta.
And CTR, the new CTR.
And then when the production one comes out, we'll have you back, and we can finish out the rest of your career and talk about the production units and how that's going.
Yeah.
Because this was an honor.
I drove that roof and just blew my mind.
Well, Alois is, I drove his, when was it?
Sorry, I know we're trying to wrap up. But the roof is so good.
Yeah. So it was, I think last winter, last winter, and the winter before, we went to the last Geneva show. So that was probably 2 years ago, right?
Right.
So I'm at Roof in Pfaffenhausen with the prototype, and we take the cars, we drive them to Geneva. And so we're going to show the SCR on the show stand, but we drive, and that's being transported by truck, and we're driving the new CTR. And so I did a lot of stints behind the wheel on that, and then I got to drive it all the way back through the Alps in the middle of winter, wipers, snow, everything. It's insane. The power is like, imagine a 935 that you can control.
Oh, I know. Well, even the SCR is only 500, but it's just like dream car. All right, next time. All right.
Yikes. I'm exhausted. Like, this was like...
I'm just getting warmed up because I have so many more Audi things, but then Dodge. And,
I know.
Yeah.
And I apologize for all the name dropping in this one, but this was a masterclass.
No,
if you guys are listening at home, you should be Googling furiously all the names we talked about.
Especially my buddy Pefkin.
But it was...
Pefkin is amazing.
I love that guy.
Yeah. So, the one thing at the end at Audi, right before I left, he wanted me to design the concept for, he would actually have me fly over. I would go into his office and sketch in his office the concept. And the idea was this front-engined machine with a Lamborghini V12 offshore race motor, rear-wheel drive, and very sort of harking back to this kind of auto union era.
Yeah.
So that if I would have stayed, I would have done that.
Oh wow!
I still feel like you were being taken advantage of.
No.
Well, we'll leave it at that.
All right.
Honor. It was
Freeman
our
Thomas,
honor. Thank you so much, Freeman Thomas, for coming to the InEVitable.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was great.